Hello and welcome back to the Freelance verse. Thanks for coming back to the channel once again. Still on the phone camera. I haven't figured out or haven't gotten a new camera yet this week. That's why this will have to do. Today's video is talking about how many languages are too many. As a translator, when you tell someone what you do as a profession, you're often faced with the question, oh, so how many languages do you speak? How many languages do you work with? And then when you tell them maybe 2 or 3, you see kind of the disappointment in their eyes, you know. Now, while there are, of course, the unicorns out there that work with like 12 different languages, that is definitely not the norm, right? The norm of a translator would usually be 3 working languages. That's probably the average, right? Very many only have 2. I mean, 2 is the minimum if you want to do translation. But very many also have 4 or 5. That's nothing odd. When you get into 6, 7, 8, that is getting into the unicorn territory, but it's still possible, right? It's unlikely, but it's still possible. And then when it goes higher, it's, unless you're really finding the one, it's most likely a scam. And that's what I want to talk to you today, because I told you on this on the channel many times, I get so many emails on a daily basis as if I was a end client or an agency. I'm not exactly sure why it is, probably because of my profiles online and just people think that I have jobs to give. Even if I had, I would not, you know, randomly give them out to people that just send me a quick cold email. That's not how I do business, but you know, for me, I rely heavily on relationships. So I only work with people that I know, that I've previously worked with or at least tested. But still, I get so many emails, requests to work together, and many of them, when they list their language combinations, seems very fishy to me, right? I see like 20 languages, vice versa, back and forth translations, and they just say they can offer it all. And that is definitely a scam, right? And that is when I ask the question kind of cheekily, how many languages is too many? That is definitely too many. What prompted me initially to make this video was actually an event I attended at the European Commission, or at the Parliament it was, I think. Yeah, at the Parliament. And the translators were giving panel talks, kind of a glimpse into their lives, you know, and they said that it's very encouraged to learn always an additional language if you work there as a translator or as an interpreter at the Commission or at the Parliament. Whatever your working languages are, they are fixed, and then you should always be working on one more. And then people usually go for kind of rogue languages that are at the fringe of the European Union, for example, where there are not many people translating into or from these languages. So you have many people working on their Irish skills, for example, or their Swedish skills, etc. So it's very cool, it's very fascinating to me, and it's actually expected that they get these languages up to working conditions. And that for me is so kind of unbelievable to think about. I'm actively learning Hungarian, right? I have Hungarian family, so I'm trying to do my best to you know, at least be able to communicate with the people and understand what they're saying. But imagining getting that up to working language, it seems impossible to me at this point, right? But then recently I had an interview with John, and he just learned Greek because out of necessity, and he got it to a working language very, very quickly. So it is possible. Maybe it's just my brain that is not I don't know, elastic enough to soak up all the knowledge. Because sometimes I even feel like my French, even though French is my working language, it's a source language for me. I don't translate into French, but from French. And even there, I'm still learning so much. I don't feel like fluent at all. You know, it's good as it is, as a working language, as a source language for translation, but I would never translate into French or do interpretation work from French. Yeah, so my first working language is English, and most of my work by far, I would say 75-80% is English to German. The rest is French to German, and a small minority German to English. I don't like offering it, but for certain clients, they just, if it's so fast paced, they just need it, you know, back and forth translation. So for one client continuously, and for one client I have before offered German to English. not my favorite, but I then put a heavy disclaimer to the client and say, look, this is not my usual language combination. If you hire me, I will of course do my best, but please have it checked by a native. And they do. Yeah, it's more about speed, because it's speed to market is just insane. It's usually, at big sports events, some player interviews that are done just before the game, and then they need to be translated immediately so they can be still aired on TV before the game with English subtitles. And, I've consumed so much football content that I know by now how they speak in English in this context. So it's usually good, but I would just not like to offer it. To cut a very long story short, I would say in my view, the optimal language amount for combinations is 3 or 4, because with 3 or 4 you have a nice foundation. Usually you have source language 1, source language 2, and potentially source language 3, and then you have one target language which is your native. In my case, it's a bit special because I have, if you want to split hairs, I have 2 target languages, with German for Germany and German for Switzerland. That's how I market myself. I distinguish between the 2 quite heavily, because there are certain differences, especially in marketing contexts. And that's how that's one of my selling points that I use in my marketing material. I wouldn't say it's a different language, but of course when you market yourself to a direct client, it's very nice to use this point here. So I would say I have 2 source languages, 2 target languages that I can use interchangeably, and that has been working very well for me. Now, let's say if I get an email from someone with 5 working languages, 4 source and 1 target, or 3 source and 2 target, I would find it still impressive and probably not question it. I would just say, wow, that's cool, that's very impressive. With 6, I would start to question it. With 7 and upwards, definitely. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I would question it. So if you have 6, if you're really confident that you can work with 6 working languages, then first of all, you probably don't watch this video, because you probably don't need my help. You're just fully booked. If not, then there's probably something you could work on with your marketing. But at that point, I would probably focus on my strongest languages, and in certain cases still, include the other ones, but not in my usual marketing material. Because in some people's minds, it can trigger kind of a reaction like, oh, this person speaks so many languages, probably none of them are really good, right? So I want someone who's specialized in my language. So I would be careful if you actually work with 5+ languages, how you phrase that, because in most situations you don't need to display all of them, right? It's very nice to have them. If you market your services to a client that needs you in a certain language combination, or maybe several, 2 or 3, then just use these. Don't even mention the other ones. The other ones you can use for other clients. So to answer the question from the title, how many languages are too many? None are too many. It's amazing, as many as you can. Get them in as much as you can. I wish I spoke more. Just use them wisely when you advertise yourself and you market yourself. And for example, on LinkedIn, in the tagline, you probably want to get all of them in there, right? Because that's what people look for. That's what people search for. But if you're targeting a direct client, they will probably only use the ones that you actually want to offer to this client, if that makes sense. I'm very happy with my 3 working languages. I can't really keep up with more, to be honest. I enjoy working on my 2 additionals. I'm learning Hungarian and Dutch. So my native language is Swiss German, derived from that also the German, of course. My first foreign language is English, then French, then Dutch, then Hungarian. I'm working on all of them actively. That is a key, and sometimes it's hard to find the time to do it. But luckily, like for me, I live in a surrounding that is mostly English speaking, and then I live in a country that is French speaking. So I use these 2 on a daily basis. My German I use every day as well, with work and with family and friends. The Hungarian I hear at home as well in the family. And the Dutch I'm trying to, brush up on. Of course, that's easier for a German speaker. And in my commune in Belgium, it's not really spoken, the Flemish version. But in the rest of the country, of course, it's a bilingual country. So these are the 5 languages that I am in touch pretty much daily, which is really cool. I love this kind of multicultural and multilingual environment that I live in here in Brussels. It gets sometimes confusing. I do catch myself sometimes thinking phrases in one language that actually are translations from other languages, and then I catch myself and I'm like, wait, this is not German, this is just translated from English to German or from French to German. So you have to be, so there's a kind of a constant translation struggle also in my brain happening every day, and it is sometimes tough. Like when I have a long conversation in French and then I switch to German or English, it gets really confusing in my brain, and then I'm happy to be in bed in the evening and just relax and then dream in. Don't even know what I dream in, to be honest. It's probably not even a language, it's mostly pictures. But anyways, hope this was useful. Of course, a bit of a rhetorical question in the title. It's never too many languages. But let me know in the comments what you speak and what you use, and what does it mean, like how confident do you have to be in speaking so you would ever use it as a working language. I'm curious about what that step is. Thanks so much for watching. I see you next Monday with another video, and hopefully by then I have a new camera. We will see. I think the picture is good, the audio could be improved. See you next Monday. Bye bye.